January 22, 2026, Davos, Switzerland. While billionaires sipped champagne and pretended to care about stakeholder capitalism, Donald Trump just announced something that made every world leader in the room choke on their organic canapes. We have reached a framework of a future deal on Greenland. Wait, framework deal on Greenland? The world's largest island, a self-governing territory of Denmark, a place where 56,000 people live and everyone thought was just ice. Lots and lots of ice. But here's what nobody is telling you. Underneath all that ice sits the single biggest prize in the 21st century resource war. We're talking between $200 billion and $4 trillion in untapped minerals. And Donald Trump just declared economic war to get it. But the real story? This isn't about Denmark. It's not even really about Greenland. This is about China. And a decade-long game of geopolitical chess that has been playing out in the Arctic while you were busy doom-scrolling. Let us start with the obvious question. What the hell is in Greenland that is worth starting an international incident over? Greenland is estimated to hold approximately 36 million tons of rare earth elements. To put that in perspective, that's enough to supply 25% of future global demand. So what? You're thinking, rare earths sound boring. Like, really boring. Wrong. Dead wrong. Because every piece of technology you're addicted to, your phone, your laptop, your electric car, those military weapons keeping the world from imploding, they all need rare earth minerals. Neodymium, dysprosium, lithium, graphite, copper, uranium, gallium, germanium. These aren't just fancy words from the periodic table. They're the building blocks of modern civilization. And Greenland has them all. The Kvanefjeld deposit in southern Greenland contains over 11 million metric tons of mineral reserves, including 370,000 metric tons of heavy rare earth minerals. The Tanbreez mine contains an estimated 28.2 million metric tons, with over 27% heavy rare earth minerals. But wait, it gets better, or worse, depends on whether you're sitting in Washington or Beijing. Greenland also possesses an estimated 31 billion barrels of oil and hydrocarbons, roughly equal to the entire volume of U.S. proven crude oil reserves. Let me repeat that. Greenland has as much oil potential as the entire United States currently has proven, just sitting there, under the ice. Waiting. The American Action Forum estimated known resources at $4.4 trillion, including rare earth metals as well as oil and gas worth $1.7 trillion. $4.4 trillion. To put that in perspective, that's more than the entire GDP of Germany. That's almost twice the market cap of Apple. That's enough money to make Jeff Bezos look broke. And every major power on Earth wants a piece. Now here's where the story gets absolutely wild. Because while you weren't looking, China's been quietly trying to take over Greenland for the last decade. In January 2018, China released its first Arctic policy white paper, declaring itself a near-Arctic state. Read that again. A near-Arctic state. China is closer to the equator than it is to the Arctic Circle. But that didn't stop them from deciding they're an Arctic power. Because of reasons, specifically economic and military reasons. They called it the Polar Silk Road, a northern maritime corridor that reduces shipping time from Shanghai to Hamburg to about 18 days, compared with roughly 35 days via the Suez Canal. It's brilliant, actually. Diabolical, but brilliant. And Greenland? That was supposed to be their Arctic crown jewel. Let me show you what they tried. 2016, a Hong Kong-linked firm attempted to acquire a former Danish naval base and port facilities, blocked by Denmark. 2018, China Communications Construction Company bid to build airports in Greenland, worth $563 million. Blocked. Denmark offered to pay for it instead. 2016 to 2018, Chinese rare earth firm Sheng Resources became the largest shareholder in the Kvanefjeld mine project, currently stalled due to uranium mining ban. 2020, attempts to purchase satellite ground stations, blocked by U.S. and Danish security concerns. 044. China struck out completely. But here's the thing about China, they don't give up, they adapt. According to Harvard's estimates in June 2025, most of the mineral, oil and gas resource projects in Greenland with Chinese backing had been paused or cancelled. But China's not done, not by a long shot, because they have one massive advantage. China currently controls around 98% of gallium and around 60% of germanium supplies worldwide, with particular dominance in the refining of minerals once they have been extracted. See the play? They can't own the mines, but they can own the processing. And guess what? Greenland's minerals are useless without someone to refine them. China's global lead in rare earth mining and processing expertise keeps the U.S. adversary on the table as a potential future mining partner in Greenland. In May 2025, Greenland's Minister for Business and Mineral Resources literally said that without sufficient capital from the U.S. or Europe, Greenland may feel pressure to accept investment from China. Translation: help us, or we're calling Beijing. That's not a threat. That's a warning shot. And that brings us to December 2024, when Donald Trump decided he'd had enough of playing nice. Trump said on his social media platform Truth Social that, for purposes of national security, U.S. control over Greenland was an absolute necessity. Then he doubled down, and tripled down, and refused to rule out the use of military force. The Europeans lost their minds. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen called it absurd. King Frederick X gave a speech basically telling Trump to back off. Protests erupted in Copenhagen, but Trump didn't blink. Instead, he announced he would institute very high tariffs starting at 10%, rising to 25% against 8 European nations if they resisted, including Denmark, America's NATO ally, a country that's been with us since World War II. Markets freaked out. Diplomats panicked. Congress started drafting legislation to limit presidential power. It was a full-blown international crisis. And then Davos. Trump meets with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, behind closed doors. For less than an hour, Trump emerges and announces, framework of a future deal, tariffs canceled, military force off the table, everything's fine now, move along. Except nobody knows what the deal actually is. Zero details, no specifics, just vibes. Trump told Fox Business Network, we're gonna have total access to Greenland. We're gonna have all military access that we want. I'm not gonna have to pay anything. Total access. Everything we want, at no cost, forever. Denmark's response, we welcome the framework but sovereignty is non-negotiable. Greenland's response, we belong to ourselves. Trump's response, we'll see in about 2 weeks. So what just happened? Did Trump win? Did China lose? Or is this just the opening move in something much bigger? Buckle up, because this story goes way deeper than anyone's telling you. To understand what's really happening, you need to understand something fundamental about 21st century geopolitics. Whoever controls the resources controls the future. And right now, China controls the resources, not the deposits. They don't need to. They control the processing, the refining, the supply chains. China produces 70% of the rare earth volumes extracted from mines globally. The European Union is currently 100% dependent on Chinese imports for heavy rare earths. The US also relies heavily on foreign supply chains. Think about that. The entire Western world, all our technology, all our defense systems, all our green energy transition depends on China not deciding to cut us off. And they've done it before. In 2010, during a territorial dispute with Japan, China simply stopped exporting rare earths to Japan, just turned off the tap. Japan's economy nearly collapsed. Now imagine that during an actual conflict. Imagine China cutting off rare earth exports during a Taiwan crisis. Your iPhone production stops. Tesla can't make cars. The F-35 fighter jet program grinds to a halt. That's not a hypothetical. That's a weapon. And China's been building it for 30 years. Trump's 2025 national security strategy identifies 3 threats in the Western Hemisphere: migration, drugs and crimes, and China's increasing influence. Greenland checks exactly one of those boxes. Guess which one? But it's not just about minerals, it's about geography. The island is situated along the geopolitical gap, a strategic choke point for surveillance in the Arctic region, whose name references the first letters of Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom. Control the geopolitical gap, and you control submarine access to the Atlantic. You control the fastest missile routes between North America and Europe. You control the future Arctic shipping lanes that are opening up as the ice melts. Oh yeah, climate change isn't just melting ice caps. It's opening up entirely new trade routes and mineral deposits that have been frozen for millennia. An area the size of Albania has melted since 1995, and this trend is likely to accelerate unless global carbon emissions fall sharply. More melting equals more access equals more resources equals more conflict. The Arctic isn't just getting warmer, it's getting weaponized. Now let's talk about what China's really been doing, because the official story that they're trying to invest in Greenland for economic reasons is only half the truth. China's polar research programs have raised security concerns in the Arctic. In 2022, The Biden administration asserted that China used its scientific engagements to conduct dual-use research with intelligence or military applications. Dual-use. That's spy speak for it's both civilian and military. China has planned research and satellite ground stations in Greenland. These facilities are crucial for China's Beidou navigation satellite system, developed as an alternative to the US's GPS system. You think that's about helping ships navigate? No. It's about making sure Chinese missiles can hit their targets when GPS is unavailable or jammed. There have been joint Chinese-Russian naval patrols near Alaska in 2022 and 2023, as well as Chinese and Russian bombers flying together within the Alaskan Air Defense Identification Zone. In July 2024, they're not just interested in Greenland, they're mapping our defenses, testing our response times, practicing for something. And then there's the commercial angle. In September 2025, Beijing launched its first Arctic shipping route to Europe. The voyage of the Istanbul Bridge, a Panamax container ship, completed the route from China to the UK in just 20 days in October 2025, demonstrating the enormous time savings compared to the traditional route through the Suez Canal. 20 days versus 35 days. That's not just faster. That's billions in saved costs. That's an entirely new trade corridor that bypasses Western-controlled choke points like Suez and Panama. The Polar Silk Road isn't just a shipping route. It's China's backup plan for when the U.S. tries to contain them elsewhere. Can't ship through the South China Sea because of U.S. naval presence. Use the Arctic. Can't access Middle Eastern oil because of sanctions? Get it from Russia via the Northern Sea route. Can't source rare earths from Africa because of Western pressure? Mine them in Greenland. It's three-dimensional chess, and for a decade, China was winning, until Trump flipped the board. So what did Trump actually agree to in Davos? Great question, because as of right now, nobody actually knows. White House spokeswoman Anna Kelly said, if this deal goes through, and President Trump is very hopeful it will, the United States will be achieving all of its strategic goals with respect to Greenland, at very little cost, forever, at little cost, all strategic goals. Denmark's response, basically, we didn't agree to anything that compromises our sovereignty. NATO's response, we're discussing enhanced Arctic security. Greenland's response, crickets. Here's what we know from multiple U.S. officials. The discussions include potentially stationing additional U.S. forces at bases in Greenland, something the U.S. already has permission to do under the 1951 Defense of Greenland Agreement. Wait, so Trump threatened World War III over something we already can do? But there are new elements. Trump's Golden Dome missile defense system, a piece of it, will be stationed in Greenland. Total access to mineral resources, meaning American companies get priority investment rights, preventing Chinese and Russian economic or military foothold. Basically, veto power over Greenland's foreign investments. No time limit. This is forever, according to Trump. Legal experts are confused. Defense analysts are skeptical. European diplomats are furious, because this isn't a bilateral agreement. This is a NATO Secretary General and a U.S. President deciding Greenland's future without, asking Greenland. Greenlandic Premier Mutborup Egid wrote, Greenland is ours. We are not for sale and will never be for sale. But here's the problem. Greenland's entire economy depends on $520 million in annual subsidies from Denmark. Their GDP is only $3.50 to $4 billion. They want independence, but independence requires money. And the only people with enough money to develop Greenland's resources are the US, Europe, or China. Guess who just got locked out? Now, you might be thinking, okay, so China lost Greenland, Trump won, America secured the Arctic. End of story. Not even close. China's foreign ministry issued a statement after Trump's Greenland announcement, describing concerns about North Atlantic militarization and stressing respect for Danish Greenlandic autonomy and UN-based rules. Translation: we see what you're doing, and we're not happy about it. But China's not just complaining, they're adapting. Because here's what Trump doesn't want to admit. Greenland's resources are theoretical. They're under ice. They have no infrastructure, no roads, no ports capable of handling industrial mining, no power generation. Javier Blas of Bloomberg wrote that hyperbole around Greenland and commodities has a 50-year-long history, noting that Greenland had never produced any petroleum and attempts to mine iron ore ended in bankruptcy. Meanwhile, China's been buying up actual, producing mines in Africa, South America, and Australia. Real resources being extracted right now. Today, China has invested over $90 billion in Arctic-related projects and resources globally, though. Harvard notes many of these investments have failed or been blocked, but the ones that succeeded, those are producing minerals right now. And even if America secures Greenland's deposits, we still need China to process them, because the US shut down its rare earth processing infrastructure decades ago, and rebuilding it will take 10 to 15 years minimum. Jack Lifton, co-chairman of the Critical Minerals Institute, said, "There are lots of rare earths around the world, but the issue is refining them," highlighting the shortage of American expertise in the refining of rare earths. So Trump secured the vault, but China still has the keys, which means this war isn't over. It's just entering a new phase. Let's talk about the part nobody wants to admit. Even if America gets Greenland, we're looking at decades before we see a single ounce of rare earth minerals. The entire island, 3 times the size of Texas, has only 93 miles of road. 93 miles. For comparison, Texas has over 300,000 miles of road. Greenland has enough road to drive from San Francisco to Sacramento. That's it. Greenland has only 16 ports, each with limited capacity. The Nuuk port, the island's largest, carried 1 million tons of cargo in 2021. The Narsek port near the major mining sites, only 50,000 tons annually. Mining experts point to Alaska's Red Dog mine as a comparison, one of the world's largest zinc mines in similar Arctic conditions. It took 15 years and billions in infrastructure investment to make it viable, and Alaska has roads and ports and established mining industries. Greenland has ice. Electricity generation is inconsistent and limited. The largest installed capacity is currently 54 megawatts in Nuuk, 290 miles away from the mining sites. For comparison, a single large rare earth processing facility needs 500 plus megawatts. Where's that power coming from? Solar panels? In a place that has 24-hour darkness for months. Mining costs can be on average 5 times or more higher than in other regions. Translation: even with free access, American mining companies will spend tens of billions developing infrastructure before extracting a single gram of neodymium. Meanwhile, China's mines in Africa, already producing, already profitable, already shipping. Trump secured a mortgage on a house that hasn't been built yet, and China's living rent-free in a mansion. Now let's talk about what this deal actually costs. Because Trump says it's at no cost and forever. But nothing's ever free, especially not in geopolitics. First cost, alliance trust. Trump just threatened America's oldest European allies with tariffs and military action over territorial expansion, colonial-style territorial expansion. Denmark welcomed the news of the framework deal, but insisted it can't negotiate on its sovereignty. Translation: we appreciate you backing down from threatening us, but we haven't agreed to anything. Second cost, domestic politics. A bipartisan group of senators, including Democratic Senator Ruben Gallego, introduced legislation to restrict presidential power to use military force in Greenland. When Democrats and Republicans agree on limiting presidential power, you know you've crossed a line. Third cost, economic uncertainty. During the crisis, markets tanked, the dollar weakened, European-American trade relations strained. Not exactly great for an economy Trump promised to supercharge. Fourth cost, setting precedent. If America can threaten allies to acquire territory for resources, what's stopping China from doing the same? Taiwan, anyone, the South China Sea. Every unresolved territorial dispute in Asia just got more dangerous. Fifth cost, Greenlandic self-determination. The people of Greenland didn't ask for this. They're being bargained over like a commodity. And when you treat people like pawns, they tend to remember and resent. Sixth cost, environmental. In 2021, Greenland's parliament passed legislation prohibiting uranium exploration and limiting uranium content in mined resources. Why? Because the major rare earth deposits contain uranium as a byproduct. Mining them means radioactive waste. In one of the most pristine environments on Earth, the Greenlanders banned it. Will Trump's total access override their environmental laws? And if it does, what does that do to Greenland's already skeptical population? Here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody in Washington wants to admit. While Trump was playing risk with Greenland, China was playing Go. Risk is about armies and territories and frontal assault. Go is about surrounding your opponent slowly, claiming territory piece by piece, until they realize too late they've lost. While everyone watched Greenland, China secured majority control in lithium mines in Chile and Argentina. Locked in cobalt supply agreements with the Congo, expanded rare earth processing capacity. In Southeast Asia developed alternative Arctic routes through Russia, advanced their rare earth separation technology by 5 years, and here's the kicker. China's already developing alternatives to rare earth magnets entirely. Research into rare earth-free motors and magnets accelerated massively in 2023 to 2025. If they succeed, if they can make permanent magnets without neodymium and dysprosium, Greenland's rare earth deposits become worthless. Chinese patent filings for rare earth alternatives have increased 300% since 2020. They're not just controlling the current game, they're inventing a new game entirely. Meanwhile, America's timeline, Greenland framework, maybe by 2028, infrastructure development, 2030 to 2040 first commercial mining, 2040s at earliest processing capability, 2045 plus China's timeline, current rare earth production, today alternative technology development, 2025 to 2030 global supply chain dominance, ongoing. So who won Greenland? Trump gets to claim victory. Denmark maintains sovereignty. NATO avoids a fracture. Greenland gets investment promises. But China gets another decade of unopposed rare earth dominance while everyone argues over ice. Congratulations, we won the battle and might be losing the war. So what does all this actually mean for you, for America, for the world? We're watching the opening moves of the 21st century resource wars. And unlike the oil wars of the 20th century, these wars won't be fought with armies. They'll be fought with investment, infrastructure, technology, supply chains, currency, influence. The US still has the world's most powerful military, but China's building the world's most powerful economy. And in the long run, economic power beats military power every single time. Ask the Soviet Union. They had the second largest military in the world. Didn't stop them from collapsing when their economy failed. By 2050, the Arctic will be almost ice-free in summer. New shipping routes will be fully operational. Trillions in resources will be accessible. And whoever controls the Arctic controls global trade, controls military positioning, controls resources, might control the century. Trump's Greenland play is actually smart, even if the execution was chaotic. Because if America doesn't secure Arctic resources now, China will. Not through military conquest, through investment, infrastructure, and being the only game in town with money. Greenland's in an impossible position. They want independence, but independence requires economic development. Economic development requires massive capital, investment, and there are only 3 players with that capital: America, China, or Europe. Pick America. You get infrastructure but lose autonomy to Trump's total access forever. Pick China. You get infrastructure but become a pawn in Beijing's strategy and face Western sanctions. Pick Europe. You get slower development but maintain relationships with Denmark. There is no good option, only least bad options. And while everyone fights over Greenland, the real race is happening in laboratories. Whoever develops rare earth-free technology first, whoever builds the processing capacity first, whoever secures the supply chains first, they win. Not the country with the most deposits, the country with the most capability. American companies are finally waking up. A bipartisan group of U.S. lawmakers introduced legislation to establish a $2.5 billion strategic reserve of rare earths in January 2026. $2.5 billion. That's a start. But China's spent hundreds of billions building their dominance over 30 years. Are we too late? Maybe, maybe not. America has one advantage. When we finally wake up to an existential threat, we move faster than anyone. We invented the atomic bomb in 3 years. We went from 0 satellites to landing on the moon in a decade. But that requires unity, purpose, focus. Things that seem in short supply when we're threatening allies, fighting over pronouns, and doom-scrolling TikTok. So let's pull back and look at the big picture one final time. Trump didn't declare war on Greenland. He declared war on the future, on the inevitable shift of power from west to east, on the reality that America's post-World War II dominance is ending. And Greenland, it's just the battlefield, the proxy, the excuse. Every empire thinks it's permanent. The Romans, the Mongols, the British. Every reserve currency thinks it's forever. The guilder, the pound, the dollar. Every global hegemon thinks it can maintain control through military might alone. They all learned the hard way. Economics matters more than armies. The ice is melting, literally and figuratively. The old world order, the one where America called the shots and everyone else followed, is thawing. What comes next? Nobody knows for sure. Maybe Trump's Greenland play works. America secures resources, rebuilds processing capacity, maintains technological supremacy for another generation. Maybe China's long game pays off. They dominate alternatives, control supply chains, make Greenland's resources irrelevant. Maybe Europe finally gets its act together and becomes a third superpower. Maybe the whole system collapses into resource wars, environmental catastrophe, and multipolar chaos. What we know for sure is this: the competition for resources is accelerating, the climate is changing, the Arctic is opening, and every major power on Earth is positioning for what comes next. And somewhere in the middle of all this great power politics, there are 56,000 Greenlanders who just want to decide their own future. Maybe we should listen to them, because in the end, it's not about who owns Greenland. It's about what kind of world we want to build. Do we want a world where the strong dominate the weak, where resources are weapons, where alliances mean nothing and threats are currency? Or do we want something better? The ice is melting. The game is changing. The future is being written right now. And the question is, who's writing it? See you in the next one.